best times to buy Bitcoin and crypto that I can remember in recent years. I think a lot of the risk in this market has been de-risked, and the market is just sitting on the sidelines waiting for the election. But my core view is that crypto has already won the election. Regardless of what happens on November 5th, Washington is moving in a more favorable direction for crypto. And I think it's just a matter of times before the market moves to new all time highs. So I'm sitting here biding my time, but extremely optimistic about where we're going in the next few months.
It's really interesting you bring that up. I think some retail investors who might be watching the price action might be sitting on the sidelines because we are reaching the previous all time high. I think 99.7% of Bitcoin wallets are in the green. So, talk to me a little bit about if you are a first time investor in Bitcoin, why now is the time?
Yeah, here's what I see when I look at the charts since March. Bitcoin has been say trading in a range between the all-time high around 73,000 and about $50,000, and it seems to bump its head against that all-time high repeatedly and can't get over it. And that makes some behavioral sense. I think there are a lot of investors out there who are willing to sell at the all-time high. They like the idea.
Crypto equities as we head to the end of the year.
Yeah, I think crypto equities are in a really exciting space. You have the miners who are benefiting from the sort of dual jet packs of crypto and AI demand. You have Coinbase, which somehow maintains its near monopoly position in the retail space, an incredible business. You have MicroStrategy doing its thing. Look, there are a lot of investors out there who are still uncomfortable holding Bitcoin and Ethereum directly, and they're looking at these crypto equities as, an alternative way to get in. I think particularly if you look at Coinbase, that company is executing extraordinarily well, not just across its core business, but across what's going on in base and their view for the future. I think it's hard to look at a stock like that and not be excited about where it could go in 2025.
You said MicroStrategy is doing its thing, and I want to dig a little bit deeper into that because Coinbase, when you, I guess, look at its business strategy, a little bit more diversified, although still very focused on crypto. MicroStrategy all in on Bitcoin. We learned, I think, yesterday that they plan to raise $42 billion to buy more Bitcoin. Does the US dollar have to collapse for Bitcoin to get to 200K? You and I have already spoken about what it would take for Bitcoin to get to 100K. Unpack this a little bit for me for folks who haven't read the memo. Talk to me about how you're thinking about this and where the question comes from.
Yeah, this question was at a dinner with advisors who have a large allocation to Bitcoin. And it really stopped me in my tracks because I think a lot of us, when we talk about Bitcoin, make sort of a lazy argument. We say something like Bitcoin is becoming digital gold and the US is abusing the dollar, so Bitcoin is valuable. And what the CIO memo said is that's actually two arguments in one. So, one bet you're making when you invest in Bitcoin is that Bitcoin will continue to mature and stand shoulder to shoulder with gold. And if it does that, if it matches gold from a size perspective, even at today's prices, you're talking about $900,000 Bitcoin. The other bet you're making is that the US will abuse the dollar, it will pile on debt. That will happen in governments around the world. And the size of the store of value market, the size of the inflation hedging market will grow. The reality as an investor is you only need one of those to be true for something having some of the best research in the space. And I raise that because not because I'm aligned with 2033. I think it's possible we get there earlier, but just because that possibility of seven-figure Bitcoin is now openly being discussed in the most august halls of the leading research shops on Wall Street. And if we go back in time when Bitcoin was a few $1,000s, the idea of $10,000 Bitcoin seemed extreme. Right now, I know with Bitcoin trading at 70, the idea of $1 million Bitcoin still seems like a fantasy to many people. But you can do the math and you increasingly see TradFi investors doing that and saying that's a possibility. When will we get there? Will we get there? I don't know. But it's now sort of within the Overton window of what people are considering possible. And I think that says a lot about where this industry has gone and where it's going in the future.
Hey everyone, did you know 52 million Americans own cryptocurrencies? That's not just a number, it's a movement, economic, social, and political. Decentralized finance, blockchain, and digital currencies are more than buzz.
Positive comments about crypto. That's the trend where Washington is moving anyway. but it's going to take longer. We won't have that immediate turnover, that immediate flipping the page. There will be more uncertainty, and markets dislike uncertainty. So I think those altcoins could face a short-term struggle in that event. I would say that might be a buying opportunity if your window is a few years out, because I do think Washington has broadly flipped and turned to a neutral or pro crypto view. But I think the market may interpret a victory as a loss for altcoins. It could give sort of a pullback that, if again, if you have a multi year horizon, could be an interesting moment for you.
And Matt, just before we wrap up here, looking beyond the election, what's the next catalyst you're watching?
It's really just this tsunami of institutional assets that are coming into this space. And you can see this in the Bitcoin ETFs, which are back to pulling in $500 million in new flows every day. So I think there is still some hesitance, and maybe there's still some sort of vestige of reputational risk for these professional investors. It's not yet mainstream to allocate to Bitcoin. You're sticking your neck out. And that's not what traditional finance does. That's sort of fading over time, but I do think that reputational risk still hangs in the mind of some of these investors. But on the other side, they see these inevitable trends. They see the growth in institutional adoption. They see BlackRock building a big business in it. And you're starting to see that scale shift to where they feel more compelled to allocate and more risk in not allocating than they do from staying on the sidelines.
Matt, as always, it was a pleasure having you on the show today. Thanks so much for joining us.